feet would be like $3,000 downtown. Yeah, bro. It's crazy. Why am I not? My YouTube on the live streaming side is giving me some stupid message. Try signing in with a G Suite account. Whatever. I'm not sure if this thing went live by itself or I think we may have gone live. In which case, we're on screen right now. Hey, folks, if you are joining us, can you go ahead and drop a message? I am remote today, and so I am on a completely different computer than I normally am, and I feel like a fish out of water. So if you're tuned in right now, can you let me know if you are seeing us? Let me know if we're on. I want to make sure that we're good to go. Just drop a comment. Oh, Jake says there's a massive delay. I'm not sure why that is. Jake, are you still getting, like, do you mean that it's out of sync? Is that what you're saying? All right, so Karen says, yes, we're live. But are you saying that it's out of sync, or can you guys let me know? Like I said, I'm remote today, different computer and all. How's the audio now, guys? For those of you who are watching, are we back in sync? This is what happens when you try to fix something. You're not hearing me, Phil? 1 second. We are going to get this fixed. You should be hearing me now, Phil, right? Check 1, 2.
Okay, now I got you back.
Okay.
There was just a lot of static and rumble.
Okay. They said they're getting a delay, and I'm getting a delay from your end for some reason. I don't know why. Just never.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that a little bit. If I move my hand, it's a little delay, not bad though.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys can let me know. We're gonna start this conversation. Let me know if things are a little bit better. I don't want to waste too much time trying to get this to work. I apologize for the difficulties at the beginning. I am just trying to figure things out with my backup computer. This is not my regular streaming computer, so I had some install jobs I had to be on today, and so I picked up my computer and decided to try and do this remote. So we're kind of trying to make it work. But I want to say a special thank you to everybody who's tuning in. For those who follow what we do, and you're with us every Wednesday, thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to me, especially during these times of us trying to, connect you to some of the professionals that I have access to, and some people who are, doing it at the highest level. And hopefully, you guys get a lot of value from this series, and you learn something from these guys, because everybody who's been on so far is just a real wealth of information, and I'm really excited about my guest today. So please help me welcome Phil Strong, the man himself. Thank you for doing this, Phil.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. So why don't you start by telling people who you are? For those who don't know who you are, what you've done in the past, some of the artists that you work for.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm a front of house engineer and production manager, based out of Chicago originally. Now I live in Houston, Texas. So I started in about '95. Working for a company called Sound of Authority out of Chicago. They do a lot of concert work, and a lot of the top engineers in the country trained there. First gig that I got on was Common, which I still have that account 25 years later, which is amazing in itself.
Yeah.
And I've been his production manager and front of house engineer this whole time. I've worked on other accounts in between, but I've always been in the background, even when I'm not there mixing daily.
Right.
That led me on to a variety of other accounts. Initially took me to Philly. He was doing a lot of work with the Roots, and so I ended up with Bilal, which then took me on to Kweli, and then through touring, picked up Jurassic 5, was with them for 10 years. Ended up grabbing Kanye, did Kanye for 5 years. Then started doing, I pretty much done a lot of the cooler hip hop acts. Started working with Rebecca Foster out of New York. And then I got, 50 Cent, Tribe Called Quest, nice. Busta, did all those accounts with her. Got into some R&B work. After many years of being just in hip hop. So then I did Brandy for several years. Got a call from Rock Nation to help put together Solange's account. So I put together Solange's account for her and got her touring business up and running. So I did her for about 4 years. Went on to my most recent account would be Mariah Carey. So I've been doing Mariah for 2 years now. And also on my current roster is Mariah, Common, Lil Wayne, and Kid Cudi. So those are the 4 that I'm currently doing. And I'm mixing front of house for all of them and doing production for Common.
Right.
And I'm not doing production for the other artists right now.
Nice. So talk to me a little bit about, and I jump around in this. So for those who may be watching this for the first time, we have none of this planned. Phil texted me a couple of days ago. He's like, "Any topics you want to cover?" I'm like, we're just gonna have a conversation and allow people to listen in to our conversation. So the only thing I ever have planned is the first question, and that is, how did you get started? What did you go to school for audio? Like, how'd you get started, and how'd you know that audio was something that you wanted to do?
Well, it's funny. I played sports growing up, so I didn't really get introduced to the arts through grammar school. I mean, there was a band, but I wasn't involved. I was playing tennis and playing basketball and doing other things. In high school, we didn't even have a band at my school. So, and the churches I went to were very straightforward Catholic churches. So I really didn't get exposed to music and the arts until late high school, in a weird way. I won't say a weird way, unique way. In Chicago, there's a catering company that was based out of my neighborhood, actually, called Fanfares by Faye. And they did catering for all of the major concerts. So in particular in Black music, they did the Jacksons, they did Prince, they did,
cool.
Anita Baker, the Whispers, Luther, Any of those artists that came through Chicago, and actually regionally as well, they did the catering for them. So when I was 17, I started to work for them, driving a van and setting up backstage. And that's kind of when I first got exposed to music. We did all of the big Def Jam tours with, LL and the Beastie Boys and Run DMC. And I was setting up dressing room catering for all of those guys backstage. So
Nice.
I was in charge of their dressing rooms and got to see the stages being put together and the lighting rigs going up and audio coming in. And I was like, yo, this is nice. Like, I want to learn more about this. So that's kind of where I got the bug.
Right.
Ended up going away to college at University of Illinois to study business. And kind of the whole time I was running a arts thing in the background. So I took a ton of theater classes, trying acting, theatrical lighting, anything I could do to be involved in the arts. I was also working at a radio station from the moment I hit campus for the 5 years I was there. I was started with a radio show, started with a hip hop show, spinning hip hop. Then we went into doing production, doing commercials, added a news segment. Some people wanted to add sports, so we started doing sports broadcasting. So I was kind of over the station for many years, hiring people, training people, learning myself. And then when I got out of school, I went to work for Jenny Jones TV show at NBC. There was Jenny Jones and Jerry Springer in two different studios across from each other. So I started doing PA work for them. And I didn't like it very much. But I was hoping that I could advance through it, which is funny because I was offered a job for Sony, working for Sony Music Distribution. It was about an hour and a half away from my house, to start in the mailroom, and I decided not to take that. But then I ended up doing it for a basic level PA work for NBC anyway. After doing that for about 6 months, my executive producer called me in and said, I think you should move on. And I was like, well, am I being fired? And she was like, no, but this is clearly not what you want to do. Like, you're interested in other things. You want to be in the music department. You're asking about that. I know you have interest in other areas. I think you should really go pursue what you want to do. And honestly, it was probably the best push that I got from somebody that just saw that I was really interested in something, but I was going to take a safer route and just said, no, jump off, and push me into the deep end. So then I went to Sound of Authority, which is the one of the large sound companies in Chicago, and basically knocked on the door and said, hey, I want to learn. And he said, okay, if you want to learn, come back and you can start working with us for free.
Right.
And
right.
I basically spent most of that summer outside loading trucks in a T-shirt and with a gallon of water. And
Right.
Ernie's whole theory was, if you learn how to properly pack a truck, then you'll learn how to properly prep a show. He was adamant that we knew how to, pull together the right number of quarter pack or half pack cases, how to properly secure a console, stuff like that. So once we worked in the trucks for a while, then we got to back into the shop and de-prep shows. And de-prepping shows, you would see how stuff would come back and, cables
Right.
not the way they needed to be, things not being properly wound, things not in the right trunk. And he was like, see, this is how you don't want to do certain things. So he kind of backwards taught some of the principles. And then we started prepping shows. It was I was adamant about cables being on the roll and the right way, pulling the right amount of cables for a show, making sure that you had, all your whips, your fans, everything you could possibly need, plus a third. And that's kind of really how I got into it.
Right.
And fortunately, we had a couple of radio station accounts. We had the two big black music accounts in Chicago. WGCI radio was the biggest one. So we were doing anything music related that came to the town. At the time, Bad Boy was big and Uptown Records were big. So I remember doing Sound for Faith when she came to do her album release party. Erykah Badu when she came to do her album release party. So I was able to get And I was doing a lot of those on a small, what would be equivalent now of a Behringer M32,
Right,
some
right.
speakers. That's pretty much what I started on. A lot of the guys in my shop, they were mixing Stevie Wonder, they were mixing, all these great guys. So I couldn't get large console time. At the time we had PM4000s and Heritage consoles were just coming out. They were coming in the shop, and I couldn't get on them.
Right.
Although my boss was cool, he basically took the philosophy of, look, we close at 5:30. As long as it's back in the trunk and the shop is clean by 9 a.m., you guys can have at it after 5:30. So
That's amazing.
We just set up as much as we could at night, me and some of the other guys that had as strong an interest as I did.
Right.
And we set up drum kits and,
Right.
and keyboard rigs and, played with everything we could possibly touch and learn how to interface, and had to break it all down and clean it back up and get out of there so that we were ready in the morning. So
that's amazing. And one of the things I like to, some of the things I like to highlight on this particular program, Learn from the Pros, is less about technical skill and more about the intangibles, because you find, like, when you get to a certain level, we hang around, myself, you, Tim has been on the show, guys like Brandon Blackwell, Kenny Kaiser, all guys who, once you get to a certain level, we may have different ways of doing things, but from a technical standpoint, you get to a certain stage of being technically sound. But it's the intangibles that push you beyond just being a great technically sound engineer, to be an elite engineer, right? And for some of the younger guys watching, that's incredible. I mean, that's kind of how I learned too. Was I started as a backline tech and figured out how stuff got plugged in and patched in, and then kind of grew from there and followed my mentor around for 2 years, patching inserts and patching his console, and going, this is stupid. Like, what, you know what I mean? But that's, it's funny because years later, as an elite production manager, understanding truck pack is so crucial to part of your job as a production manager. You know what I'm saying? And so maybe at the time, never understanding these things, because you can't see where you're heading 20, 25, 30 years down the line. But talk to me a little bit about that hunger of wanting to learn, that hunger that drove you to spend all night in a shop and set stuff up and learn. Because I think for guys who are watching this that say, one day I want to have that kind of account list and credit list like Phil, that's where it starts, right?
Oh, definitely. The hunger, I think it comes from within. It's kind of in me. I'm very curious. I love to learn. And I think if you love to learn, that's a great place to start, because you can transfer that hunger into no matter what you decide to do, if you really like to learn. So for me, I mean, I've done things like, man, we've moved consoles into hotel rooms because they kicked us out of the rehearsal studio, and we took them back to the hotel room and set it up on the bed and stayed up all night, because we wanted more time with it and we weren't ready for the morning.
Right.
You just have to have that extra hunger. Even today, I spend hours every night watching YouTube videos on how to use a different processor. Or our buddy Tim called yesterday and was like, hey man, the guy from Avid told me about this Avid Matrix thing that he says is better than the Apollo. So I stayed up last night checking out the Avid Matrix stuff and reading about it and trying to figure it out. You just gotta always wanna find out more, and with that, knowledge becomes a little bit of your experience level goes up, and your ability to work faster and more efficiently goes up.
Right.
Last 2 years ago, I was doing Lil Uzi, and I really kind of pushed on his account. Although it's a simple hip hop account in theory, I wanted to run everything. He has a DJ, so it's usually Uzi and his DJ, and that's all they were used to.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it was video wall, props, pyro, smoke, big lighting rig, and we were the second act on a tour with G-Eazy. So when we started to put together this account, and I was production manager at the time, all of a sudden you have all this new personnel. You got video talent, you've got lighting talent, you got audio guys, and the artists were just uncomfortable. They weren't used to all of the bodies. They weren't used to the people. And I said, okay, how do we simplify this and make it where the DJ can still run the show the way he wants to run the show, so he doesn't have to relearn anything.
Right. Right.
And we ended up using a Pioneer S9 to basically run the whole show. So via Ableton and Dante and MIDI, we were able to construct the playlist where he could actually fast forward and back up on his DJ mixer to launch songs. He had his laptop with the songs on them. He could launch them from his mixer, and that triggered the time code for the video wall. It triggered the time code changes on all of his auto-tune effects, both in front of house and in monitor world, and it launched the time code that corresponded with video and lighting. So everything ran, but it was all off of the Pioneer S9. Wow. So, but it was a lot of nights learning how to program Dante and reading through, going through switches and figuring out what you had to turn on and turn off to make sure the Dante worked right. These were all things, not time that I was getting paid for either. This is time that I just had to spend because I wanted to know it better. Right. You know, and I hopped on the phone with a buddy of mine, and Bill Oakley, who's a Dante guru, and asked a bunch of questions and just got into it. And you just got to have that hunger, man. You got to want it to be better. You got to want to do it. And then you've got to just continually push yourself, you know. And some of it you may not even use, but some of it you just need to know a little bit about and just kind of understand what's going on.
Right. I heard a saying, and I hope I don't butcher this quote, but I think it said that if you do more than you get paid for, then one day you'll get paid more than paid more than what you do, right? So like there you go. It's kind of like, I remember that Stephen Marley tour that at the beginning of that tour in 2018, and I'll talk a little bit for those watching about how we met, because you know, people ask me sometimes how do you know this many people? And I'm like, it's really a small industry. Like it's really not, you know, we're all somehow connected at the end of the day. And we always talk, I always talk in this program about the importance of having a great personality and being somebody that people want to be around, because you're not going to last very long in touring when you got to live on a bus with 10 or 11 other people if you have a terrible personality and nobody likes you. So, you know, those are some of the things that we talk about, you know, being a friendly person. Like, contrary to what some people believe, you don't have to be a jerk to be successful in this business. But, you know, when we first started touring with a console package, like, I remember Vera and we got to, I think it was Charlotte, North Carolina, and our package got drop shipped to Charlotte, to the hotel. And I remember getting to the hotel and saying to the lady at the front desk, I'm like, listen, I need like a suite with like a big living room. And we paid for the upgrade like out of pocket just because we wanted to drag consoles into, and like essentially set up our entire control package and make sure that we knew, because we didn't have a tech out with us. The production company put it together and just said, here, have fun, guys. and like, we couldn't go into a show not knowing like how everything was wired up, and it's a good thing we did, because then it was in the middle of a Waves upgrade, I think, when they switched from 9 to 10. And I had upgraded all my stuff to 10, but the production company had. So we had to, like, I spent like the whole night with, making sure stuff was ready to go, like unreal. And dialing in-ear mixes with multi-tracks. And the next day we got to soundcheck at the first show. And it was, because we were coming off another tour with a different package, and got to soundcheck, and it was as if it was the same package, because we spent the time to overnight, just, I think we were up to like 4 a.m. just making sure stuff was right. And so, you know, when talent gets your foot in the door and gets you there, but it's going to be the work ethic that keeps you there. And when artists think about who they want, you know, as a monitor guy, when they look to their left, who they want to see there, and when they look out into the crowd, who they want to see out behind that console, talent's only like a really small percentage of that.
No, those are great points. I can't tell you how many accounts I've hired for, and the management always asked me about the personality. They didn't care about the talent. They were like, yeah, but are they gonna get? Jurassic 5's account was like, yo, but are they gonna get along with the guys? Like, you know, I'm sure he's good, but you know, is he gonna fit? You know, we already got a bunch of personalities on the bus, and you know, these guys have their own factions already. You know, is this guy gonna fit? More so than whether the person was good. I mean, I've had good people fired from tours that just because they didn't personality-wise get along with people. So, no, that's a huge point. Being somebody that gets along. And then the working through it point again, yeah, man. I mean, setting up in a hotel room, I can't tell you how many times I've stayed up mixing Ableton sessions in the hotel room with the music director, trying to level tracks and getting stuff worked out. And you know, it's 3 a.m. and everybody's tired, and I'm like, nah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And then that work ethic turns around. That's actually how I got Mariah. Daniel Moore, the MD for Mariah, was the MD for the Jacksons. And I was working on that account with him. We were up mixing some Jackson stems, and he really got to understand that I knew the music and that I really knew, like, I was like, yo, we're missing that groove isn't right, or that hit's not there, that needs to be there, you know. And he was like, yo, you're right. And so we went through the sessions, got everything mixed, and we kept pushing. I think we were up, took a break at like 4:30 in the morning, met again at breakfast at 6:30 and started going again. And that ended up leading to me getting the Mariah account. He was like, yo, man, I know this dude knows what he's doing, and he's willing to put the work in and make sure everything's right. So that kind of led to the Mariah account. And you don't always know where the blessings are coming from. You just want to put your best foot forward and be ready. And then you just get a phone call sometimes out of the blue, like, hey, man, are you available? Would you be willing to work on it? Or, you know, we need somebody. Do you know anybody? And you may at that point raise your own hand and be like, yeah, I'm available. And they're like, oh, I didn't think you wanted to take that. That kind of happened to me with Uzi. They didn't expect me to take that account. And I took it because I wanted to have an artist that was in the current genre of hip hop, you know, of trap music, whatever you want to call it. And I saw with a show where he wanted to take the show, and I was like, this is going to be an interesting technical hop for us to try to pull off. Let me see if I can get him, you know, where we want to get him. And it worked out great. So you never know where the blessings are coming from.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, I say to some of the guys I mentor that there's no such thing as luck. It's the preparation of opportunity. It's the intersection of preparation and opportunity. And so you talked a little bit about, you know, being ready, and I'm going to get to the Mariah thing, because that's an experience, a story I got to tell. But talk a little bit about some of the gigs that, because I know, because it's the same with me, where over the years, you know, maybe an act or a band or a music director had looked to somebody else first, but they weren't ready or weren't prepared, or they didn't know one key thing, like, you know, talking about using time code or whatever that case might be. They weren't prepared for that opportunity, and then it ended up landing in your lap. Maybe give us some examples of that, because I'm sure that's bound to happen over the years.
Yeah, I mean, the same way that the Little Uzi account kind of exploded technically in terms of what they wanted to do, the Kanye account did the same thing. It didn't directly affect me at the time because I was a little bit ready for it, but his account went from 4 channels to 16 channels. And then literally in one rehearsal, it jumped to 80 channels. Wow. And they brought in Adam Blackstone, one of the famous music directors out here now. And Adam, they literally called him one night, and then he came in, he spent all night getting stems together and tracks. And we got to rehearsal the next day, and they were like, yeah, it's going to be, you know, this is the playback list. And the playback list was like, you know, 48 channels of playback. And then it was 16 that Kanye already had. And then it was, he wanted to add some singers, and he wanted to do this. And we're looking at these PM 5Ds that was out there at the time. Like, this isn't going to cut it, man. This isn't going to do it. And the monitor guy at the time was trying to cram the show into that console. And I was like, dude, you have to wave the flag right now and tell them it's not going to work. You have to get a new desk. Oh, no, man, I think I can make it work. I said, you can make it work when? At rehearsal? Like, you're not going to be able to make it work consistently. You need to go to production and tell them you need a new desk. And we had this conversation for probably 2 days, and he didn't do it. And then on the third day, he got fired because he couldn't do what they needed him to do on that desk.
Right, right.
And sure enough, the new guy came in and got the desk he wanted the day he arrived. By the time he got there, his new desk was waiting for him.
Right.
So accounts grow fast sometimes, and that's the bigger part of being prepared. You don't know what, because of the people that change and the people that come in, how it's going to go.
Right.
And things can get away from you if you're not familiar with as much as you can, and if you do get caught behind the 8 ball, you've got to be able to respond quickly.
Right. Absolutely.
Adding playback into a live show can be challenging. Dancers, Mariah's show was the first show that I've worked with dancers, so that was a whole dynamic that I had to get around. Just from the amount of time that they needed on stage every day, that affected my ability to mix or to get ready, timing wise. Like,
right.
Time that I wanted to play back stuff or to work with the band wasn't available. So I either had to, because I multi-tracked everything, I was able to stay at night sometimes. After, everybody was gone, I was the only one there, clean up my sessions and be ready in the morning. Or I had to come in early and do some stuff before they got started. So that was a different dynamic that was thrown my way. And then you're like, okay, you've been mixing 25 years with no dancers? Yeah, 25 years, no dancers. that was, or 23 years, no dancers. Yeah, and then finally it was a bunch of dancers too. So, and it was Vegas, and there was a lot of props and everything else that just took time. So the sequencing of things all kind of come together differently. So yeah, being prepared, man, is just, you never know when something's going to hit you and take you in a different direction. Props, that truck pack experience that I mentioned at the beginning, you're right about, you don't know when it's going to hit. With Jurassic 5, they added a bunch of props, and then it just got dropped in my lap. We literally, we were at, what's the venue in LA? It's changed so many times. Anyway, 4,000 seat venue in LA, all the gear shows up and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to rehearse here for a few days and then we go on tour. And I'm like, so how are we getting this stuff out of here? And it was unwieldy. It was, it was built perfect for the shop, but not for touring.
Right.
So we had to hire more guys to come out to fix things and getting it tour ready over a couple of days and getting it in the truck. And if you don't understand how things fit, and how things need to be secured in a truck, then you can't properly do it.
Right.
And if smaller accounts, you don't always have the luxury of having an experienced stage manager that's loading trucks every night, or riggers that can help secure things. Sometimes it's a very minimal crew, so you've got to have an idea of how to do it yourself, and how to get it done. I had on Lil Uzi's account, we had a gigantic skull that was 2 inches shy of tall enough to fit into a truck. And we ordered a truck one night, and they sent a different style of truck to pick it up, and it wouldn't fit. And we're on the dock with this gigantic skull, and it's 2 inches too short to fit the skull. So
Crazy.
The guy was like, oh, I didn't know you needed that, even though it was specific on the order. And they agreed that that's what they sent. And we had to get another trucking company to come out at, what the show came down at 1. It's 3 a.m. We're trying to get another truck to come and pick up a skull in the middle of Vegas. Yeah, so you never know. You got to be ready.
Yeah, for sure. And for those, I want to remind everybody who's watching, if you got questions, definitely make sure you drop it in the chat. I do have it open on my really tiny screen that I'm working with today. But so if you do have questions for Phil, make sure you drop it in. Talk to me a little bit about the value of relationships that you've built, and then we'll get into some technical stuff. But having to call, let's say, a truck at 3 a.m. has got to be some solid relationships. What I call flat tire people that you can, if you had a flat, you know who to call, right?
No, definitely, man. There's you mentioned it's a small industry. What's even smaller as you go up the totem pole? As you get to the production manager level, one production manager might hold 5-6 accounts. The one manager, like a guy like Scooter Braun, manages a ton of accounts, or a Rock Nation right now that has a variety of accounts. So the amount of people up the totem pole shrinks dramatically. And it's really important to have those relationships. Just from a musician level, I started with Adam Blackstone. He was doing City High. We did City High together back at the beginning when I first started. After I started with Common, he got out into Philly, started doing Philly acts, and ended up on tour with them in Europe. And Adam asked me to stay on and mix City High for a minute. And it was his first MD gig. Now he has everybody.
Yeah, he's
Timberlake, Jay-Z. It's crazy. He does everybody. And we grew together. And that relationship has always been very important to me, and I think important to him as well. Is he trusts me on accounts. There's certain accounts where he'd be like, okay, I got to send you on this because it's for TV, and I need everything to be right. I need you to go and get it straight. He'd say, I'm sitting in the A team, so I knew who was going to be on the call. And sometimes we weren't even the touring band that was with the artist at the time. He'd send in a different band. L.A. Reid would want somebody different just for TV. And say, okay, we're sending in this band to play for her for TV, and she can go back out with her touring band later.
Right.
And that happened with Chrisette Michele as an example. We came in and did all of her TV production stuff, and then she went back out with her touring band. So that relationship with Adam has been key. My relationship with Daniel Moore, another music director. So you can kind of, as an engineer, you can get hired really 3 different ways: by the manager, by the production manager, or by the music director. I'll say 4, or by another engineer that refers you in. But ultimately, it's going to go to one of those 3 people. So if you want to mix and you want to be out on tour, you've got to get to know some of the production managers and some of the music directors. And if they like you and they have can get a feel for you, or if they've been to a show that you mix that they really liked, and they hear that you're cool to work with, then that's a great way to network, and get into the space. And then in terms of that book of emergency phone numbers, generally it's another production manager. Curtis Battles is one that I worked with for many years. Curtis has done a ton of accounts. He does Eminem and Kanye, and I've called Curtis quite a few times at 1 a.m. and be like, "Yo, big bro,
Yeah,
I need some help, or I need a guy, tomorrow, or do you know such and such in the city? He's giving me a hard time. Yeah, cool, no problem. Let me call him. And he'll call ahead and say, hey man, this is my guy coming in. Make sure he gets what he needs. And all of a sudden, that one truck doc I had turned into 3. So
yeah,
it's definitely networking. And connecting to people, and just and your fellow engineers. Look, engineers, we kind of know who's good, who's fast, who has an aesthetic for certain sounds. Some guys that just have a great world music aesthetic, and can instantly pull up a mix with a world music band, or nail a double tap delays like no problem. And you're like, yo, we need him on that account.
Right.
Or other guys that just are great at ears, and the band is all ears, or they're just switching over to ears, and that guy can help bring them along. And you're like, you know what, this is going to be a good person for them to teach them how to use ears. And he's not going to get pushed into bad mix situations because the band keeps saying, turn this up, turn this up, turn this up. He's going to say, stop, everybody. Hold on, what's going on? What are we hearing? What do you need to do? And really be in control of the account and bring them along. And everybody has their different role. So
sounds like you're talking about how I got hired with Stephen Marley. So sounds like you were telling my story there for a second. And this is a good time to segue into that. Tim Hibbert and Veer just showed up in the comments. So let's welcome the latecomers, which is actually the story I was going to tell next. So they came at the perfect time. So how we met, for those watching, I remember we were playing Stephen Marley. We were playing an acoustic tour in Houston, which is where you live now. You're a hometown Houston guy. but Tim was in town, and for those who've been watching the program, Tim was on a couple weeks ago. Tim was in town doing the Houston rodeo with Cardi B, and you know, so each of us posted that we were in Houston. He called me, said, "Yo, I'm in Houston for the rodeo," and I'm like, "Wicked, we're here too." So he said, "All right, I'm off today," and we were off the next day in Houston. And he said, "All right, I'm gonna come down to the show, put an extra pass on for me for Phil Strong." And I was like, "Heck, is Phil Strong?" You're just saying this name like I'm supposed to know who Phil Strong is, which in hindsight I should have known who Phil Strong was. But he was like, "Yeah, man, my buddy Phil, he's mixing for Mariah Carey, and they've got a show here tomorrow night." So you guys came down to the show. I think we were playing the House of Blues in Houston, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was a fun show. That was the beginning of that acoustic tour. I think it was like our third or fourth show, and so we ended up. So I remember, man, you were so good to us. You took us out at night. We went and ate some food, some really good food too at this spot. I remember that spot. But what was interesting to me is that we had the choice of going to or trying to go to see Cardi B. No offense, Tim, but Tim had his 400 K1 box rig, and we could have gone there or came to see Mariah Carey. And to be honest, because those who watch this program know that I'm very blunt on this program. I wasn't really into the Cardi B thing. I was like, I'd have gone to hang out with Tim because I've known Tim. But then the minute I heard Mariah Carey, full band, and the Phil Strong is mixing, we were like, all right, we're going to see Mariah Carey. and I remember we walked into this venue, which is a really nice venue in Houston, performing arts space, and the band rolled off, and this very long story is leading me to your question that you posted, Tim. But I remember the band rolled off. We heard the kick drum, and both me and Veer kind of looked at each other, and Veer was like, "Jesus Christ!" And we were sitting like right behind front of the house, and at that point, Veer was like, "I can leave now. I'm good. I don't need to hear the rest of the show. I'm satisfied." So the question that Tim posted, which was this long story to lead me to this question, is how do you get your drums to sit right in the mix? I don't know if you're gonna tell all the secrets, but
that's a good one.
Yeah.
No, it's been interesting. I've been blessed to work with a lot of great drummers. A lot of the Philly cats, because I did so much work in Philly. So Brian Fraser Moore, Boots Green, Rashid. I mean, there's so many of these cats that really have chops. So they play so well, I don't have to fight with them so much. And that's been a blessing. Kareem Riggins, who's on Common's account for many years, these guys can really play. Steve McKee out of Philly as well. Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's funny. I learned how I wanted drums to sound from listening to the Roots records,
right,
like hip hop drums, and really listening to Questlove. And I think the first thing you notice in a lot of his music, especially, is that the cymbals are very forward, and that the kicks, the kick, snare, and hat are very present. And kick, snare, hat, and then you get that break. When that hip hop break comes in and hits that big cymbal, it needs to be heard. So that's kind of always been a part of my mixing. Is cymbals are pretty forward. I try to make the kit sound as natural as it can through the overheads and kind of bring everything else up to match, and then drive it a little bit. I don't mix quiet. I've never been a soft mixer. Like getting me down to 104 dB or less is a challenge. So I will let you have it a little bit. So kick for me right now, for many years, the standard 52, 91. I tune my own kick drums every day. I don't let the drum tech do it.
Wow.
And a lot of times I'm even, if the drummer will let me, I'll push for the heads that I want on it. I think it's important if you can get that sound that you want straight off the instrument. You got to start there. Definitely not too much cushion, not too many pillows or blankets, like a decent amount of muff, but not like where you can't hear the drum. You've got to be able to hear the drum.
Right.
And then importantly, using the mics correctly.
We've had conversations about this.
Yeah.
This is for all those watching. Get ready. This is going to be good.
The larger diaphragm kick drum mics are actually designed to be in the drum, not at the back of the drum, right with the head or with the little blue ring lined up with the back head of the. No, that's not how it's supposed to work. And you'll figure that out if you actually read the instructions on the microphone. And it goes back to the ultimate theory of mixing with microphones, which is proximity effect. So if you put the kick drum mic closer to the actual batter head, you're going to get more impact and you're going to get more bass. So putting the mic in the drum actually gives you a stronger and more direct sound than putting it further off of the head.
Right. You know what's interesting?
For some reason, this myth exists in our world that
I know they line up the blue ring. Everybody does that. Everybody lines up the blue ring with the porthole. Insane. You know what's interesting? You talked about like reading the instructions. When Veer came on the program and did learn.
I'm losing you, Jay. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Can you hear me? I think I just lost your microphone. I can't hear you, no. I still can't hear you. It's like a bad kung fu movie. I think Rendezvous might not. You might have to use headphones if you're using like the built-in microphone on the computer. Stand by, guys, while we work this out. Still can't hear you. Lost you. Nope. Still don't got your audio. You don't have wired headphones, do you? All right, stand by, guys, while we figure out what's happening with the Phil's audio. But yeah, while we're waiting on Phil to get sorted out, it's funny when Veer was on Learn from the Pros, he talked about the same thing of reading the manual, but specifically for Waves plugins, and understanding. Okay, you're gonna. Yeah, if you log into the link, I'll add the phone. All right, stand by, y'all. We're just gonna get Phil sorted out. All right, there you go. Hold on. I'm gonna add you back in. Yeah, I can hear you now and see you. All right.
Okay. Okay. Great. Perfect.
All right,
So,
wicked.
yeah. So you said Vera was talking about the same thing, reading the manual. That's extremely
Yeah.
important.
So one of the things he talked about was the fact that when you load up a Waves plugin, for example, there's a little question mark at the top right hand corner of the plugin that if you click it, it actually opens up the manual. Because you see all these guys throwing these different types of compressors onto
Hmm.
like channels, and then it affects the mix in a certain way. Like for example, if you use an optical compressor on a microphone that has a lot of background noise, right? Not understanding how that plugin is designed to work, and then you wonder why your mix sounds the way it does because you don't really understand the stuff that you're using. So it
There you
brings me
go.
back to that same microphone concept. So what does your drum mic kit look like currently? So we know you 9152 on the kick. What
Well,
else are you
I
using?
was gonna say, so it was 91. It was
Oh, it
52. I
was
switched over now. Yeah, I switched over now to the Telefunken M82
right.
um, on as the large diaphragm mic on kick now. The I stopped midway along the way at this AKG that I found that I really liked, and I think it works great for R&B, for certain R&B accounts. But right now I'm on that Telefunken M82 in conjunction with the 81, and I find it to be amazing. The Besides that, I'm using Beta 98 amps on toms. My snare mics vary depending on the player, and
Right.
that's probably the more interesting thing that occurred recently. So Mariah's drummer has to rim shot a lot for some of the big '90s R&B records, and when he strikes, he doesn't always strike the way that I'm used to some of my other drummers playing. So I had to. I used to use a 44, KSM 44 on the top sometimes. That didn't work with him. I actually, because it wasn't just a strike, it's the fact that he plays those dotted heads. So a regular ambassador coated head, I can get the snare sound almost anywhere with the mic. With the dots, it tends to be very centered in that one location. So my KSM 44 wasn't picking it up the way that I wanted it to. So I had to go back to a regular Beta 57 in order to really aim the mic at the dot and get that sound to come up the right way. So although I didn't want to use that mic, I wanted to try something a little sexier. The proper mic worked best. And I think
Right.
that's an important thing, is that, you can't always go into a situation assuming exactly what you want to do. Oh, I'm gonna mic the ride separately, and I'm gonna do this and do that. You've got to kind of look at how the musician plays, and and then figure out on that same account. Originally, there was a rim shot mic on the kit, and I've never used a rim shot mic in my life. So I was like, nah, I don't need that. And the monitor engineer wanted it, so I tried it and I hated it. And then I went back to, once we put the 57 on, I didn't need it. Beta
Yeah.
57 got me everything I needed, that and some good compression. And I was able to get that big rim shot that I needed. But I had, reggae chops to know how to do that. You
Yeah.
got to know how to mix with compression to get that up, and the guys got to hit it the
Yeah.
right way.
Yeah.
Um,
We of course use a rim mic on reggae, but we've been doing that for. I mean, it's that balance, right? Is the
right.
because people will ask and say, well, but you have to get that balance of compression right, because if it's out of whack and your rim is too present in your mix, then all of a sudden your snare sounds real metallic. Because you're picking up all the sound of the shell of the drum versus like the
Yeah.
actual sound from the skin. So it is a delicate balance and a lot of practice. But of course, if we've been mixing reggae for years, so that's kind of how we roll. I think I may have lost Phil again. He might have got a phone call or something because he's on his phone now. We're working through these difficulties. In the meantime, while I wait for Phil to come back, sending a shout out to everybody who's watching. Nelson Robinson, Tim Hibbert, my buddy Tim, Jake McMullen, the great fellow Canadian, good friend of mine. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna try to get Phil back, and then we'll start to wrap up, because usually we're only like an hour. This one's been really good for those of you just joining. Of course, you'll be able to go back and watch it again after. It's been a really good session with Phil today. So let's see if we get him back. I think we may have don't know if we're gonna get Phil back. All right, guys. Well, in that case, I don't know if we're gonna get Phil back, and it's just about time for us to wrap up anyway. So, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's session there. Unless Phil comes back in the next few minutes, we'll definitely have to do a part 2. Oh, Phil's back, so let's get Phil back on now that we got him. Yeah, I can hear you now. You froze a second there. Okay. Stand by one sec, Phil. Let me get you back in to the program. 1 second, guys. All right, we're almost there. I just got to reframe. Hey, audio guy doing video. This might take a minute, y'all. All right.
All right, sorry about everybody.
No, all good. What were we talking about before you froze?
We're going over drums. I just been finished.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, snare mics. You know, I had to adjust because of the head and the player, and then so don't always go in with an assumption of exactly what you want to do or what your sound is. You've got to listen to the drummer and listen to how he's playing. You know, guys hitting ghost notes and stuff that you've got to either loosen gates up on or not use gates because those notes need to come through. And then cymbals, you know, I mean, look, there's been tons of times I use the classic 2 cymbal, you know, setup, but then you get guys that are putting crashes in places where you normally wouldn't put a mic, but you might need to add a third mic. You might need to put a pencil mic on a splash just to make sure that it's present, because the cymbals are so wide, and then the splash is right in the middle over a tom where, you know, but it's an important element that needs to be heard. So trying to go into preconceived notions and actually listen to what the drummer's playing. And that sometimes means just going up on stage during sound check and sit there and just stand over him and listen to him play. See how hard he's hitting things and how present he wants it to sound, you know, relative to everything else. And then when you go back out front, you can try to reproduce that for him. Because some people, they're hitting cymbals and they just want a little bit of cymbal color. They don't want it really present. And other times guys are like, no, I want my cymbals, you know, if I hit it, I want it in your face. Bam, smash, you know. So you got to go kind of listen to how they're playing it, and then you get a better understanding of what the actual musician is trying to do.
So, and it's interesting because I had this similar conversation with Kenny Kaiser, who mixes the Killers. And that's one of the things we talked about. He said going into the Killers gig, you know, he had all these really sexy microphones that he used to like to use. But then getting into the killer situation, he doesn't have a single condenser on the stage. Like the only condenser microphone is the 91 inside the kick. Like everything else is dynamic because the stage is so loud that if he just had to go all dynamics and it's what works, right? And that's ultimately at the end of the day, you're hired as an audio guy to make it work. You know, if you could have preconceived notions all you want, microphones that you endorse, but if they don't work, it's funny because people say to me, people who know that I'm like a DPA Masters Club guy, right? They will try to pull this answer out of me, but every company that I work with that I endorse, we have this conversation at the beginning. Listen, if it's not the right thing for that situation, I'm not going to use it just because I endorse it. Exactly. You can't tie me into anything exclusive because you take Shaggy, for example, not all the time is a DPA de facto capsule going to be right for, you know, we're playing a gig, let's say, sometimes we play some country music festivals that have these extremely long catwalks out in front of the PA. You put him on a de facto capsule, it's going to be trouble when he gets down in front of that PA. You got to use what's right for the gig.
No, you definitely have to. And, you know, sometimes you'll get hit with different things, but you got to use what's right. You got to use what's right and really make it work. So, but standard things, yeah. Now, you know, 414s or KSM 44s on overheads for the most part for me. Hi-hat, I like the AKG 451. That's one of my favorite mics. And then toms, the Beta 98 amps. I like the Shure tom mics. You know, I've used the Sennheiser stuff, the 604s and 904s. They're good. It's what I prefer. And then snare. Sometimes I use a Beta 181, which is the small Shure little. I love those mics. They're amazing. To me, that's like the new version of a Beta 57 in a lot of ways. You can use it on anything and make it sound good. You just need to have enough of them, and you can use it on hi-hat, you can use it on overhead, you can use it on percussion, you can use it on snare. You can use it anywhere. So I always keep a couple of those in my kit as well.
I've seen them come in really handy on hi-hat for drummers who keep their cymbals really low over the hi-hat. Yes. So you can't necessarily get a traditional pencil condenser, especially if you're using like a SM81. That's a longer traditional pencil. This one is the flat round head, so you can kind of stick it in over the hi-hat.
Yeah, especially and it keeps you from getting air blown in the mic if the guy's, as he opens the hi-hat, if you have that pencil mic right at the lip, you get air blown into.
So that's pretty cool.
181s. I mean, to me, if you can buy a couple of those, always that's like one of the number one go-tos in my mic kit right now.
Awesome. What's your now? I know I'm asking this question with the knowledge that you're a Waves artist, and you do have. I'm pretty sure you have a preset in a particular Waves plugin. So what's
ironically, I'm a Waves artist and I'm also a UAD artist now.
Oh, so, amazing. Competition is good.
So, but again, it goes back to the right tool. So, if anybody's seen the stuff that I've written on the Waves website, my favorite Waves plugin by far is Max Volume.
Right.
It's
isn't that's the one you have the preset on? I think I've used your preset a few times.
Yeah. So it's great for bringing up basically shrinking the dynamic range on snare drums. It'll bring up the soft stuff and it'll squish the loud stuff and give you this nice tight dynamic range.
Great for that rim shot that you were talking about.
Amazing for rim shot.
If you don't have a rim mic.
Exactly, and it gets you this nice tight snare sound, and it doesn't. Although it limits it, it doesn't sonically really change the sound of what you're playing, which is great. It's not a compressor that has a lot of its own sound. You know, not like some of the even the stuff that UAD does, the 1176s or some of that other stuff that has sonic character. It doesn't really have any character. It just controls a lot, which is kind of where I am with the Wave stuff. I like Q10 as an EQ. I like some of their EQ plugins, and I like some of their control plugins, the L316 or max volume. Not as into some of their compressors, but I do like some of their limiter and controlling stuff. So I ended up getting a UAD live rack during that Lil Uzi experience to run a lot of his vocal effects on with the auto tune and stuff like that. And now I've expanded it, and now I use it on Lil Wayne and Kanye, Common, and all my accounts really.
Yeah.
There's a variety of UAD plugins that I use on UAD live rack. So
yeah, that's actually how I ended up getting a live rack when I was out doing front of house for Magic. I needed to implement tuning, and so I got it to be able to use auto-tune real time, and just kind of expanded that. Now it's sitting in Veer's front of house rack that's sitting in the shop because Stephen, obviously, well, nobody's touring right now, but it's gonna be on the Stephen Marley package. My live rack will be going out with Stephen Marley. So what's the one must-have UAD plugin for those watching?
Ooh, must-have UAD plugin. I would say the Sonox Oxford Dynamic EQ.
Vera's gonna agree with you on that one. I can see him just smiling right now.
Yeah, being able to grab stuff and pull it out is amazing. I mean, whether you got a artist that's cupping a mic and you need to go get some of that 2K, 25K, whether you've got a artist that's belting and you really want to define some of the mid range, or if you even want to use it as a de-esser a little bit to get some of that high end stuff out, only when necessary, I think is great. So I really like that plugin a lot.
Awesome. I'm gonna take a couple questions. If anybody got questions in the viewing audience, we got time for a couple, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll ask one because I know some people are gonna be surprised by this. Well, those who don't know you, but console of choice.
That's interesting. So anybody that knows me knows I'm a Midas guy. I've been that way since the Heritages.
Yep.
And when I started on Mariah 2 years ago, I brought the Pro X out to mix on that. Even though it lacked some of the features that I wanted in snapshotting, sonically, it was the console that I really wanted.
Right.
We kind of maxed that console out in terms of all of its AES-50 capabilities in and out. And I started having failures. Significant enough failures that I ended up ditching it. And for this latest round, I took a SD7 Quantum. So I switched over to Digico. I also own a Digico SD12.
Where's Tim? Where Tim at?
Tim's over there. He knows I'm not the biggest Digico fan. But I tell you what I do like about it. The Digico, you can do almost anything on it. Its flexibility is unrivaled. It's number one.
Right.
It's both in routing, layout, things that you really want to do on it. Being able to input time code, all kinds of stuff you can do on it. You just can't do on a lot of other tests. I'm not in love with the mix engine on it, nor the compressors or the EQs, which is big. So how do I use it then? For the Mariah account, Neve sent me a 5059 outboard mix bus. So I basically took stems out of the Digico and all my mixing took place in the Neve. So that was kind of my glue. And then post the Neve, I run into an Avalon 747 tube compressor for a little polish. And then it hit my my Meyer Galileo.
Galaxy.
Yeah, Galaxies or Galileos, whatever I was using at the time. But I can't get around the fact that the digicodes are just, you can do anything you want to do on them, and you can put things where you want to. And once you get used to the workflow, they're by far the best consoles right now. I mentioned I own an ST12. I was gonna buy a 338 going into this touring season.
I have one in my house right now. It would have been behind me if I had been home, but
yes, I was literally gearing up to buy one of those, and the bottom fell out of the touring market. So I'll probably grab one. I don't know if I'm going to get rid of my 12 or if I'm going to grab a second one. But starting to rent out control packages on my accounts, and that's going well for me. So
and I mean, you talk about the flexibility of routing. It's really kind of hard to go to anything else once you get used to that. And now with DMI cards being a thing in the quantum line, it's like and nodal processing, and the mustard stuff sounds way better than the stock stuff. So I did ask that question with a little bit of a
loaded answer.
The intent was definitely there, but
I think it's important. I don't want to shoot over the fact that, like, I picked the Midas because I really wanted the work of that sound to go with the time period of her music. That was an important thing. I mean, on effects, I'm using a Lexicon 224 on some drum effects for her because that was more the piece that was featured during that time period. And I wanted to have those authentic sounds. So it is important for you to consider the context of what you're doing and make sure that it makes sense.
And for those who are watching who have never used the Midas discs, they are great sounding consoles. The Pro X stuff, they sound fantastic. It's just like you said, limited in terms of when you get into larger input shows and you start to get into more complex routing and stuff, you're definitely limited. But from a sound standpoint, and really and truly, that should be, Kenny Kaiser said it when he was on the show, is you should pick a PA because it sounds great. You love how it sounds. You should pick a console because you love how it sounds, right? Because ultimately that's your job. You're an audio guy. You're making stuff sound good. So if the gear, the microphones, the preamps, everything sounds great, then obviously at the end of the day that makes your job easier. Tim says yes, about time, in all caps, by the way, regarding the digital. And Nelson Robinson says finally. So
finally, right. So a couple of things I want to add that I want to make sure we get in. I think for any engineers that are going into accounts, there's a couple of things that are very important. One, that you kind of understand what they've been through and where they are. You know, what each account has a certain level of experience. Some accounts they've been used to having A guys and A gear, and you can walk in and do anything. Other accounts you're kind of pulling along, and you've got it may be the production manager, it may be the manager, it may be the accountant that you're pulling along, trying to get them to where you need to get. But ask for what you need, and make sure that you're put in the best position to be successful. Don't take accounts if you can't win at the account. As an example, it's very difficult the first day you jump on an account to put up a mix that somebody would say is excellent. You can probably be very good, but anything better than very good, because you don't necessarily know the nuances of the music or some of the changes or how the musicians play, it's difficult to be more than very good. So if you're going in and you're filling in for a guy for one day, or you're going on an account that you really want to get, and they're like, oh, we're not going to have sound check, or, it's a festival and you just got to jump in and do it, man, you might not want to take it that day. You might want to wait for it to come around another opportunity. If it's an account you want, because it's going to be very difficult for you to be all the way there. There's going to be a cue or something that, and depending on who's watching, it could affect you long term. So
absolutely.
And that goes to mixing on desks that you might not know very well. If you're getting thrown into a bad situation like that, and you need to insist on having your desk there for you to be the most successful, then insist on your gear being there and say, hey, look, man, I'd love to take the gig. This is what I need to do the gig. You know, I need my Digico. I need this. I need that. You know, if there's a particular tech you want and you need to ask them to hire you and your tech, then, you know, you've got to do that. I've had accounts that I almost lost because my tech was bad. I've had and walked away at moments that he shouldn't have when I needed him. Or he was slow tuning and got me in a position every day where I was behind the 8 ball and I had to just start pushing him out the way and be like, you know, or go back to the sound company. I had to call 8th Day back and be like, yo, I got to get somebody else, put somebody else in the account. It's important to understand that they work for you and they work to make your life easier and to make your situation better. And if you're not step in tune with your tech, you can really get yourself in a world of trouble. If he's tuning the rig one way and you're listening another way, or he's not really paying attention to how you mix, and it's making it difficult for you. You need to get with the tech that really is your guy. And there's a couple that I really like. And I give a shout out to my guy, Taylor Nyquist out of Nashville right now that texts for me from Mariah, and he mixes for a bunch of people. But we have a great working relationship. He's awesome. I like Mike Mordente out of Houston. Great tech. Love working with him as well. And these are really solid guys, man, that will listen to your music, listen to how you mix. If you need an ear, you need an opinion. Hey, man, as you know, are you hearing this? Or, you know, did you hear that? You know, or it's important to have somebody that you trust to bump something off of. And don't think you know it all. Definitely listen to other people's opinions. So,
right. Amazing, man. Like, so much gold in that, and so much that younger guys can take and learn and understand as they navigate through their career. Listen, man, I'm privileged to know you. I'm privileged to call you a friend. So much wisdom, so much knowledge, and thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to do this, man. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for letting me talk. It's a pleasure, man, working with you, knowing you guys. I'm looking forward to us all getting back out here. I think the only disappointing thing is sometimes is that we're all mixing the same position. Sometimes we don't all get to work together.
Yeah. So, for sure.
Having a network of great guys has been huge. So.
Yeah, man. All right, and I want to thank everybody for watching. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. We do this every Wednesday, at least for now. Until I run out of professionals to talk to. But we're going to try to keep doing it, even as work starts to come back in slowly for me. As you can see, I'm doing it remote today, but we're going to continue to do that. And check out my Patreon site, patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. We do bi-weekly masterclasses. We got one coming up on Monday. We should have had one yesterday, but we had to move it to Monday. So if you're looking for audio training and you want to dig in a little bit deeper, check that out. It's patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you very soon. Take care.